Hello, and after a very lengthy layoff, welcome back to another episode of the African Five-A-Side podcast. Apologies for the lengthy delay in getting episodes out. I had a very busy month of June. It started off in Berlin, in Germany, where I was invited by the House of World Culture to speak about how football supporters in North Africa use their methods of support as a mode of resistance. And then after that, spent some family time in France. And then after that, got really sick for about 10 to 15 days. But back on my feet now, and really just in the nick of time, because there's so much to talk about. There's so much that we missed out really discussing. There's Rulani Mokoena has left Mamelodi Sundowns. Absolutely mind-boggling. We can talk about that in the near future. We could definitely talk about the Euros and the political landscape of the European continent at the moment and how it's affecting the football. But what I wanted to talk about today, what we're going to start off with, is the CAF 2025 Afcon qualifiers. The draw has been carried out. We know who's going to be playing who during the qualifiers. And I just wanted to do a very early premature breakdown of the 12 groups of four. And of the 12 groups of four, the top two from each group are going to be advancing. And so I just wanted to give my initial thoughts and see if those evolve over time. So I just made a few notes before I begin talking about the actual group-by-group breakdown. And the first is that these matches are going to be taking place between September, October, and November 2024. And the Afcon was actually postponed from the summer of 2025 to the winter of 2025, and really the beginning of 2026, so between December and January 2025 to 2026. So it got pushed back 6 months, but the qualifiers are taking place really we're in July, so in 2 to 3 months' time. And as a result, you have a gap of about 12 to 14 months between the beginning of the qualifiers to the Afcon taking place. And so the teams that we see playing the qualifiers are not going to be the teams that we see playing in Morocco. There's going to be a big difference in terms of the number of players, the kinds of players that are being selected, and even perhaps the coaches. There might be some coaching changes before the tournament kicks off in North Africa. So let's talk about Group A quickly. Tunisia, Madagascar, Comoros, the Gambia. Tunisia, for those that don't know, here's a trivia question. When's the last Afcon that Tunisia didn't qualify to? You have 5 seconds to answer. 1992. That's why we call them the Germans of African football. They're so consistent at qualifying to the African Cup of Nations. They'll make it, even if they're unspectacular, even if they've only won one Afcon in their footballing history. They qualify to the Afcon every single time, it feels like. The Germans of Africa, in my opinion, definitely the favorite in this group. The thing is, the federation and the coaching staff is in turmoil. So they named Fawzi Benzerti, who we spoke about on this podcast before, a legend of African football, a coach with so much experience, but that's kind of crazy. But he doesn't really have a staff, so they just named him. The federation is very unstable at the moment. There's supposed to be elections coming up, I believe, in July, but we've been saying that for the better part of 12 months now, that Tunisia is going to finally have a new federation president that's going to take all the decisions. And so the word out of Tunisia at the moment is that Fawzi Benzerti is the coach, but that he's probably not going to be the coach for long. If there are elections that take place, if there is a new president, they're going to get rid of Fawzi Benzerti and he's going to come and name his own coach. So a lot of instability at the federation level, a lot of instability at the coaching level. And all of that said, Tunisia, despite the instability, they still find a way to be rock solid defensively. And if you look at the FIFA World Cup qualifying, for example, they've conceded 0 goals. Only them and the Ivory Coast have conceded 0 goals so far, I think, in the 4 matches that have been played. So they have the best defense on the continent alongside Cote d'Ivoire. Because of that, because of their defensive solidity, despite everything else going on, Tunisia should be getting out of this group. Now, Madagascar and Comoros. When I saw this, it brought me back to Egypt in 2019 when Ahmed, they told us his name was Ahmed, like his first name was Ahmed and his last name was Ahmed, the former CAF president. But then they also said, no, it's actually just Ahmed. Whatever the case may be, the former Malagasy president of the Confederation of African Football, he said that, or the former Madagascan president, he said that us from the island, we're so good at dealing with adversity. We're used to storms. We're used to hanging onto the mast of a ship and having the wind and the rain batter against us. And he's talking about here like political adversity. But that really entered in my mind. I thought, wow, are people from the islands really more tenacious, really more determined than other people? Might be true. But when it comes to Madagascar and Comoros and the Gambia, I think these are three very promising sides. These are three sides that have had incredible results in recent Afcons, right? Madagascar in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, Comoros in 2021 in Cameroon, and the Gambia in 2021, and then even last year, I thought they were decent as well. But of the three, when I compare them side by side, Madagascar are an aging side with players like Ibrahim Amara and Andrea Carolus. They were like the sort of golden childs of the GMG Academy in Madagascar that didn't really work out. But they're old. They're getting older and they're not getting any younger. Comoros and the Gambia in particular have much better younger talent that's ready to hit their prime. And in my opinion, they probably have better coaches as well. Madagascar have a coach named Roro Rakotondrabe, excuse me. Whereas the Gambia have brought on Johnny McKinstry, somebody that knows the African continent. He's been working in Africa for the better part of a decade now. And with players like Yakuba Minte, Musa Baro, I just think that the Gambia, if they can deal with organizational issues at the federation level, are probably going to join Tunisia out of Group A. So Tunisia and the Gambia. Let's go to Group B. Morocco, Gabon, Central African Republic, Lesotho. Not an easy group. The thing with Morocco, and this is a question I'm just throwing out there, it's not really like a criticism. They're not going to have played an away match for so long. They've only played, their last away match was in June 2023 against South Africa. But before that, they only have, so that's the only away match that they played in the last 4 years. Before that, it was 2021, I believe. Now, does that matter since they're hosting the tournament anyways? Probably not, but I thought that that's something they could have, used in Cote d'Ivoire because they were in San Pedro. It was so hot. They struggled to deal with the humidity because they were used to playing in the best conditions in Morocco every single time because, if there's a team in their group that doesn't have a stadium that's accepted by CAF, Morocco always offers, the opportunity for the team to have, all their accommodation paid for. They just have to play the matches in Morocco. And as a result, there's this phenomenon in Morocco where they've played so many home matches, de facto home matches, not de jure home matches. And they don't come up against that kind of adversity that hits you when you travel and you play away matches on the continent. Again, is that going to matter for 2025? Maybe not because they're playing at home anyways, but it's something to keep in the back of our mind. That said, in my opinion, Morocco are the best side in Africa in terms of talent. Yassine Bounou, Ashraf Hakimi, Naif Haggard, Sofiane Amrabat, Azdin Unahi, Youssef Nassiri, Amin Adli are all in their prime. And then you have players like Ayoub El-Kaabi and Sofiane Rahimi who were incredible in the Conference League and the Asian Champions League. But then you have like this new generation of players, Shadi Riyad signing to Crystal Palace, Soufiane Diop in midfield, Bilal El Khannous, one of the best young players in Belgium, if not the best young player in Belgium. Oussama Al-Azzouzi in midfield, Amir Richardson in midfield, Elias Akhumash on the right wing, Elias Ben Saghir as a sort of second striker, and Brahim Diaz, them like sort of bringing him in. That team, on paper, the best side in Africa, in my opinion, at the moment. There's just questions surrounding their coach Walid Regragui, and is he too stubborn? Should they have kept him on after the disappointing Afcon? I think if you took a straw poll of, your average Moroccan supporter, at the moment, they probably feel like they should have gotten rid of Regragui. But it's close. It's probably 50-50, 55-45, something like that. He's just shown to be a coach that's much better when his teams are underdogs, when they're defending, when they have the world against them. Not so much when it comes to, needing attacking impetus, needing to score, and so on and so forth. So Walid Regragui is the question mark, and I can't believe, if you told me that I would be asking that question 2 years ago after their incredible run at the World Cup, I would have told you you're crazy. But that is a question at the moment with regards to the Moroccan supporters and Moroccan press. So who's going to be the second team that gets out of this group besides Morocco? Gabon, Central African Republic, or Lesotho? Gabon, like a few different sides that we're going to talk about, if you look at their starting 11 now, and you look at their starting 11 5, 7, 9 years ago, it's almost the same. Brula, Kwalemanga, of course I'm blanking for names now, but Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, Mario Lamina, these are all players that have been, it's practically the same squad. And in my mind, I'm always thinking like, okay, they couldn't get it done at home. They haven't really been able to punch through the glass ceiling. What makes me think they can do it now? And I never have a good response for that. And so Central African Republic, on the other hand, under their coach Raoul Savoie, have progressed enormously over the last 18 months. And they were very, very close to making it to the last Afcon. Despite the fact that they're not playing matches at home, they have a lot of very interesting players like Mafuta as a striker, Jeffrey Kondogbia in midfield. But it's still, I would still consider it a toss-up for second place. I think it's comparable to level of talent. Maybe Gabon slightly inched them, but Central African Republic have better momentum at the moment. I'm always too harsh on Aubameyang and Gabon, so I'm going to pick Central African Republic, and I'm going to pair them alongside with Morocco out of Group B. Group C, Egypt, Cape Verde, Mauritania, Botswana. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but Egypt under the Hassan brothers went back to 3-5-2, and it just felt so good because for me, it's so natural to Egypt. We want to see that free-flowing football. Mohamed Salah was in this free roll. We call them, free electron in French. I really like that term. Trezeguet was back to scoring very important goals. They just need to figure it out defensively. That was the problem under the previous coach, the Portuguese coach whose name I'm blanking on at the moment, Rui Vitória. And it continues to be a problem under Hussam Hassan. They need to get back to, shutting opponents out, not conceding a goal, clean sheets. If they can start doing that, incorporating some of that free-flowing football, I think Egypt are going to be okay. The second team I'm going to have coming out of this group, Cape Verde, and they've just been absolutely consistent after that Afcon. Great Afcon, make it to the quarterfinals, not semifinals, quarterfinals, I believe. Playing probably the best tactical, the best technical football in the tournament. They keep the same coach. They keep many of the same players. I think all of the same players. And they're doing very well since then. So those are the two teams, Egypt and Cape Verde. Mauritania, if you look at their standings in the FIFA World Cup rankings, FIFA World Cup qualifiers for 2026 are horrible. Bottom of the group. And they just gave their coach Emir Abdou $35,000 a month in terms of salary, which is, crazy for Mauritania. That's a lot of money. And so for him to produce such poor results in the most recent international window is kind of scary. He's really going to have to be playing for his job here now in getting Mauritania back to the Afcon. Group D, Nigeria, Benin, Libya, and Rwanda. This group is crazy because Nigeria, Benin, and Libya, if I'm not mistaken. No, Nigeria, Benin, and Rwanda are in the same FIFA World Cup qualifying group. 3 out of the 4 teams are in the same FIFA World Cup qualifying group, and now they're in the same Afcon qualifying group. So they're going to be very, very familiar with each other. Nigeria are in turmoil. They brought in a coach after they fired, or they didn't renew Jose Peseiro. They brought in Finidi George, a Nigerian legend of the 1990s, was coaching at Enyimba, was doing a decent job there. But it didn't click for him and the Nigerian Super Eagles. Clashed with players like Victor Osimhen, and they were almost dominated at home by South Africa. I believe even though they drew, it didn't look like he knew what his best formation was. Didn't look like he knew who his best players were. And fair enough. I mean, he was new in the job, but they're just in turmoil from the federation and the coaching level. Benin, I think, feel confident because they're playing Nigeria first and they want to take advantage of that turmoil. And they also have Gernot Rohr as a coach who used to be the coach of the Nigerian national team between 2016 and 2021. So he knows the team quite well. That's also a derby. And when you have a derby, the smaller team always feels a bit more comfortable because they say, okay, we can rely on more of the extracurricular factors to perhaps get a result, whereas opposed to the better team, just wants to focus on the football. Libya, there's an interview with Coach Micho on his channel. I highly recommend everybody checks that out. Serbian coach, very well respected across the continent. He's only lost 1 match, I think, out of the 14 matches he's been in charge with Libya. Great job in FIFA World Cup qualifiers. Great job in a lot of friendly matches. He's relied on players like that were neglected in Libya. Players like Ahmed Akrawa, Tubal, Faisal al-Badri was sort of in and out of the Libyan national team. And he's built a team around them of, unspectacular but very industrious, very reliable, young and experienced players. And it's really paid dividends for him. So Libya, they need to make it back to Afcon if they're serious about their footballing future, and I think it could be possible. So Rwanda brought in a German coach, Thorsten Spittler. I wasn't planning on speaking about the four teams, but I'm going to do it. They actually hadn't won a competitive match in the previous 3 years, and then they beat South Africa. Huge result. Even though South Africa, I believe they had like a 10-hour travel trip to Rwanda. It was very, very, very difficult trip, which for sure impacted the way they played, but still, it was a great result for Rwanda, who backed it up with another good result. I forget against who. I think they drew in the next match, but they could have won. And they have a lot of great promising players in defense, and the goalkeeper is very promising as well. And so they should be able to keep clean sheets, and so that could give them the capability of giving some of these other teams trouble. But of Nigeria, Benin, Libya, Rwanda, I'm going to pick Nigeria and Libya to make it through to the next round. It's going to be a close one, though. This is a tougher group than it looks. Group E, speaking of tough groups, Algeria, Equatorial Guinea, Togo, and Liberia. Look, since the arrival of Swiss Bosnian coach Vladimir Petkovic, Algeria have not looked good. Algeria actually have not looked good over the last 3-4 years. Who are we kidding ourselves, It's the same thing over and over again. Very lethargic in possession, very slow in possession, can't defend well, whether it's set pieces or counterattacks. And yeah, not efficient in front of goal, not rock solid in their own final third of the pitch defensively. Players that are injured, players that are falling out with the coach. Riyad Mahrez, is expecting to be called up. The coach didn't call him up because he said he was expecting a phone call from Riyad Mahrez to say that he was available to be called up. It's just a bunch of egos are in it. It's a mess. It's a complete mess. And I was hoping with this new coach, we could press the hard reset button and start all over again. But it's taking a lot more time than I expected it to. And it's not helping that this coach is not really creating, he's not the one that's actually making out the list of 23 players that he's calling up. It doesn't seem like he knows the talent pool, the Algerian talent pool, that he's done an extensive amount of scouting, that he has strong opinions on certain players. Seems like he's relying on the local coaches and other people in the federation to influence him. And so I want Petkovic to be a lot more assertive and to hit the hard reset button and to focus on fixing Algeria's defensive problems. If we manage to do that, great. But if not, I could see Algeria continuing this very, very disappointing slump. Still, I'm picking Algeria to get out of the group alongside Equatorial Guinea without Emilio Nsue. Remember, FIFA have banned him, I believe, for a decade, if I'm not mistaken, for him being ineligible but continuing to play for the Nzalang Nacional. Still, they did okay during the World Cup qualifiers. Still looked like their organized selves, and despite missing their captain, who comes up with crucial goals all the time, Equatorial Guinea, I could see them going through. Don't have much to say about Togo and Liberia, except for Liberia have very talented young players. They have a 17-year-old named Divine Teya, who I named as one of the best African talents in the Guardian Next Gen list, which I do every year for the Guardian. And also have Moses Sa, who I'm keeping an eye on, who I might name in this year's Next Gen list because he's only 16 years old. And he's a very, very good player. So if under Mario Marinica, the Romanian coach, Liberia can make it back to an Afcon, I think that could be a pretty good story. Right. Group F, Ghana, Angola, Niger, and Sudan. Ghana seemed back on track with Eto'o. Great wins against Mali and Central African Republic. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't pretty. But what I like is that they stepped up when it mattered. And that was the opposite. Go back to the Afcon. It was the final match of the group stage against Mozambique, I believe, when they conceded 2 goals in 5 minutes or something. They collapsed when it mattered then. But here, they stepped up when it mattered. And I think that's really, really can do them a lot of good for their confidence and their mentality. Also have an incredible amount of young talent alongside Morocco, probably some of the best young talent on the continent. Players like Ernest Nuama, Ibrahim Osman, Abdul Fatawas, Izahaku, Kudus, of course. The fact that they're relying on these players and they're producing gives me a lot of confidence in Ghana's near and middle term future, actually. Angola have continued, like Cape Verde, had a great Afcon, continued a lot of the good work. They're in the COSAFA Cup final versus Namibia as I'm taping this. Over the last 18 months, very competitive against all opponents. The only problem with Angola is sometimes they can get tripped up. They'll play lesser opposition and they'll stumble to a 0-0 or a 1-1. They won't lose the matches, but they need to find a way to separate themselves from lower opposition at times. So in this group, Niger, for example, and Niger can be a very tricky side. Sudan, don't look now, but Sudan are top of their group in FIFA World Cup qualifying. It's absolutely crazy what they've been able to do under coach James Kwesi Appiah, who's Ghanaian, by the way. So like Gernot Rohr was the former coach of Nigeria in the other group. Here we have James Kwesi Appiah, who was the former coach of Ghana and is Ghanaian and knows Ghana very well, of course. So Sudan, there's nothing really that I can point at to explain their recent success. Maybe I'm going to bring on my friend Abdul Qadir Musa to speak about it from Sudan. But it's the same group of players practically. And all of a sudden, they're putting in incredible results over the last 6 to 10 months. And you know what? I'm going to be a little sneaky and I'm going to pick Ghana and Sudan to qualify over Angola and Niger. It would be a great story for Sudan, but the way that they're chugging along with this kind of momentum and confidence, it wouldn't be an absolute surprise. All right, we move along. Group G, Côte d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone, Zambia, and Chad. Côte d'Ivoire's gamble on Emirates FI paid off, not just at the Afcon, but even post-Afcon. They're having great results in the 6 months since. It's weird because they're still celebrating, kind of. They played the match against Gabon in the World Cup qualifiers in Korhogo, still like traveling across the country, bringing the trophy with them. They gave a tribute to Max Alain Gradel, who retired from international football. And the coach, Emirates FI, even admitted that he still thinks about the Afcon. He said it's hard not to think about the Afcon. The thing with Emirates FI, what I would tell him now is like, hey, now we have to definitively turn the page, starting from September. No more like celebrating, no more any of that. Let's focus on what's going to take place 12 to 14 months from now, which is the next Afcon. That's the thing with the Afcon. You win it, it takes so much effort and sweat and blood and tears, and you just want to celebrate. But the next one comes right along, and you just got to get right back into it, and you got to forget that success. The only thing I have with Emirates FI that I'm going to be watching is how does he deal with cases of established players that were left out of the Afcon winning squad. Players like Wilfred Zaha, Eric Bailly, Maxwell Cornet. Karim Konate was in the squad, but was left out, I believe, in March and in June. What does he do with him? So just want to see like how he deals with certain players. Does he keep them in the fold, keep them involved, keep them implicated, or does he discard some of them and start, dealing with negative emotions in that sense? Zambia are falling apart. And this is surprising because prior to the Afcon, actually they were in a qualifying group with Côte d'Ivoire for the previous Afcon. And I think they finished top of the group ahead of Côte d'Ivoire. And under Avram Grant, everything seemed to be going very well. But now it's really splitting at the seams. There are reports that Avram Grant is trying to coerce players to sign with his agent. Fashion Sakala spoke out about it. And Fashion Sakala has been excluded from the group. And Zambia don't look good. And basically, it seems like a matter of time before this thing completely collapses. They need to probably get rid of Avram Grant and refocus on getting back, their that front three that was clicking so well of Lamak Banda, Patsandaka, and Fashion Sakala, and focus on unity if they're going to do anything here. But I don't think they will. I think we're going to have a surprise in this group. I think Sierra Leone, under Amidou Karim, a local coach, they have a great mix of older players like Curtis Davies, talented players like Alhaji Kamara, the striker playing in Denmark, Mohamed Kamara, the goalkeeper playing in Guinea at Haroya, and very young players like Saliuba, who's another one of those players that I have in my next gen list of last year, just 17 years old, another very, very talented midfielder. Something tells me that Sierra Leone is going to manage to get out of this group. This isn't one of the stronger groups in my opinion. Côte d'Ivoire should breeze through it, and then it's going to be a toss-up between Sierra Leone and Chad. I'm going to go with the boys from Freetown, the Lone Stars, Sierra Leone. Group H, DR Congo, Guinea, Tanzania, and Ethiopia. East Africa versus Central and West Africa. DR Congo, like Angola, like Cape Verde, didn't change anything from the Afcon. Same players, same 4-2-3-1 formation. Guinea like Mali, are a team that is so good. The players are good, the coaching staff is good, but they just need consistency. They always seem to fall apart when it matters the most. And so I don't feel like we can rely on them too much. But Tanzania and Ethiopia, in my opinion, first of all, I think this is the worst iteration of the Ethiopian national team since they made it back to the Afcon in 2013. Only really no Getachew Panom, but they're missing like a lot of those, Shimelis Bekele, I don't know, like Dana Girma, Salahuddin Saeed, those like superstar players in Ethiopia that could sort of get your result here and there. Even Abubakar Nasir, I don't see him anymore. I don't know what's going on with him at Sundowns. So this looks like a weak Ethiopian team to me. Tanzania, like Gabon, seems to be the same team over the last 6 or 7 years. So if they didn't really impress me, then why would they impress me now? I think this is going to be DR Congo and Guinea. Group I, Mali, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, and Eswatini. Mali have fired their coach Eric Chalet after he lost 2 consecutive matches in FIFA World Cup qualifiers. They're negotiating with Florent Ibenge from DR Congo. No luck. And actually, the players were complaining. Hamari Traore, the captain, sent out a statement to all of his teammates, and they all published it on social media at the same time, where they were complaining about the conditions that the federation were putting them under. They said, for example, in one of their most recent matches, they only arrived to the country 10 hours prior to the match. And they said, we can't perform if you're putting us in these kinds of positions. Hamari Traore has been suspended by the Malian Federation for sort of inciting players to post these statements on their various social media platforms, and things don't look good for Mali. Mozambique, on the other hand, do look quite good. Like Cape Verde, like Angola, like DRC, kept the same consistency, the same coach since the Afcon. Lots of continuity, and that's always good. Guinea-Bissau were interesting. They hired Luis Boamorte. I don't know if you guys remember him. He used to play for Arsenal, I believe West Ham. I think he was most recently on the coaching staff at Fulham. And he was there for a good 4 or 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. And Guinea-Bissau decided to take a chance on him, a gamble on him, after they spent so long with Bashir Okande. And to be fair, Guinea-Bissau, they had 2 draws in his first 2 matches. And one of them was against, for example, Egypt, and one of them was against Ethiopia. So the one against Egypt was at home. They were actually taking the game to Egypt. And so you could consider that a good draw, whereas the one with Ethiopia, because I considered them so poor, you would think that they could have done a better job there. So I'm going to pick, look, if it was just form, I would have picked Mozambique and Guinea-Bissau. But Mali have too much quality. So I'm going to go Mali and Mozambique. I just don't know too much about Luis Boamorte to gamble on him. All right, almost done. Group J, Cameroon, Namibia, Kenya, and Zimbabwe. In my opinion, this could be one of the weaker groups in qualifying. Cameroon, we've talked about the circus in Cameroon for the last 6 months, really. Samuel Eto'o finally got fined by the Confederation of African Football to the tune of $200,000 for his betting deal with 1xBet. He was not ruled guilty of match fixing, which is very, very important because of the leaked audio that came out between him and Valentin Quinn. Still, despite like everything that was going on with Samuel Eto'o and the Ministry of Sport, Marc Brice, the Belgian coach, had a great result, winning 4-1 against Cape Verde in a recent World Cup qualifier. And Cameroon, like Morocco, I'm a big fan of their starting 11, especially now that Carlos Baleba has sort of emerged in midfield. The front 3 are great. Michael Ngadu-Ngiji is back in the fold as a starting center half. Honestly, if they could just get their things, if they can get their stuff together, Cameroon, in my opinion, should be easily a top 5 national team in Africa, probably a top 3 national team in Africa. But they just can't seem to get out of their own way. Namibia under Colin Benjamin are probably one of the sides in Africa that play the most intentional negative football. Always 0-0 or 1-0, but it seems to be working. So they just need to make sure they win their home matches, and then they can play negatively away from home. No idea what to expect from Kenya and Zimbabwe. But this is not the Zimbabwe of 2017 with, Knowledge Musona and Kama Biliat, Marvelous Nakamba. No, this is a different kind of Zimbabwe. The best days are behind them. And so I'm going to go with Cameroon, and I'm going to continue with the hot hand of Namibia. Kenya, I know, have their eye on 2027, and they're going to want to at least have, one Afcon under their belt to warm up before they host the tournament. But solid defensively for them. South Africa, Group K, South Africa, Uganda, Congo, and South Sudan. South Africa, in my opinion, have cemented themselves as a top 5 African national team. What they did in Nigeria was absolutely great. They're just struggling to find their striker, right? But is Ikram Reyners the man, from the striker from Stellenbosch? I think he could be. Maybe Lyle Foster comes back. I don't think it's Evidence Makopa. I don't think he's going to be your striker. What I would say is that if Zwane can continue to perform as he has, then maybe you don't need an absolutely lethal striker, because Zwane has been scoring so many goals. Mshishi has from Central African midfield. From Central attacking midfield. South Sudan have some good momentum, but way too poor. Congo Brazzaville are an absolute mess. They're forfeiting matches left and right. So this is going to be South Africa and Uganda. Finally, the last group, because we are half an hour in. Apologies. Senegal, Burkina Faso, Malawi, and Burundi. Senegal have Aliou Cissé fatigue, which is interesting, right? It's that thing where you always think the grass is greener on the other side. Look, they are winning matches, but they're winning matches 1-0. I think they beat Mauritania 1-0, for example. The players, the supporters, everybody wants more from Senegal. They've been experimenting, I think, with a 3-4-3 that even Sadio Mane came out and said, look, we don't like this formation. There's a lot of, I think, he's been there for 10 years now, or almost 10 years. There's a lot of fatigue around Aliou Cissé, and that's going to be interesting to monitor. But I thought he's been doing a good job of transitioning, the old guard out of Idrissa Gana Gueye, Sadio Mane, Kalidou Koulibaly, and bringing in players like Pape Matar Sarr, Mohamed Lamine Camara, Ismaïla Sarr, Iliman Ndiaye. I think he's been transitioning a new generation of players in pretty well. This is going to be a very, very interesting Afcon for Senegal, because I think, if they don't do well, it could be the end of Aliou Cissé with Senegal. But overall, he's been, one of the greatest coaches in African football history, in my opinion. So that's fine. Burkina Faso, Malawi, Burundi. Burkina Faso have been one of the more disappointing teams of the last 24 months, alongside Algeria. Their last win in total was at the Afcon in the first match against Mauritania, just a 1-0 win. But since then, they haven't won any matches. Lassina Traoré, their star striker, is back, and they really needed a striker. And that's the frustrating thing about them. They have so much talent. They have Dango Ouattara. They have, as a right winger, they have such an experienced midfield. They have such a talented defensive line, great goalkeeper. And so I know, they're not playing at home. I know there's, it's not the most well-funded federation, and the conditions are not great. But Burkina Faso, they should be doing a lot better than they are. Malawi and Burundi, I don't think are a threat. Burundi have brought in a Coach Etienne, who I interviewed in 2019, 2020 when he was in Tanzania. I think he's a very bright coach, very talented coach, and they have a good midfield. They have I forget the name of the player, Yusuf Daish. Yeah, I forget his last name. He's playing in Nice in midfield. Gael Beger-Imana, former Newcastle midfielder as well. Saidi Tibagonziza from Simba. So Burundi have, in my opinion, very good midfield, bright coach. They could trouble Burkina Faso a bit, but too much quality. So Senegal and Burkina Faso are my sides to make it out. So those are my picks to make it to the next Afcon. Of course, there are going to be surprises. There's always are in African football, but excuse the long episode. We're going for 35 minutes now. So hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to try to be putting up episodes at a much more frequent basis. We're going to talk about the Euros. We're going to talk about Rolani Mokoena and his future. And maybe we're going to try to do a few more interviews. Maybe we can see if we can bring on the Liberia coach. We can see if we could bring on Johnny McKinstry in his new job. We're going to see if we can bring on a few different coaches, maybe a few different players as the summer months drag on. But until then, keep it locked into the African Five-A-Side podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll speak to you soon. Peace.